Hello, I'm Lisa. Welcome back to Sevilla Storytime. So in a recent video of mine, I uploaded some images from San Fernando Cemetery, which is just on the outskirts of the centre of Sevilla. It's very easy to get to, and it's a lovely cemetery. If you've never been and you're interested in that sort of thing, then it's well worth a visit. I was very much impressed by the cemetery. I know it sounds like a strange thing to say, oh yeah, I had a really good time in the cemetery, but it's true. First of all, it was just such a beautiful cemetery. It's so well kept. It's more like a garden or a kind of, I don't want to say a park, but it almost had a park-like quality to it. It was just very pleasant to walk around. Another thing that really struck me was how amazing the tombs were there. I can't even begin to transmit how impressive these tombs are. There are some really famous tombs of bullfighters and singers and personajes, famous people from Sevilla and from Andalusia here in the cemetery. When you go to see their tombs, they are literally works of art. You only have to look at the tomb of Joselito el Gallo, who was a famous bullfighter and died very young. His tomb is spectacular, and it's worth going to the cemetery just to see his tomb, honestly. And there are various others that have works of art around them, and they're super impressive. And it just leaves you with the mouth open. Another thing that impressed me was El Cristo de las Mieles. This also features in another short video of mine. So it's a sculpture by Antonio Susillo, who's a famous sculptor and has made tons of beautiful works of art, and a lot of them can be found here in Sevilla. And it's a crucified Christ. It was one of the last works that he did. And there's a whole legend around El Cristo de las Mieles, the Christ of the Honeys. After Antonio Susillo died, they decided to erect this crucified Christ over his tomb, right in the centre of the cemetery. Shortly afterwards, this mysterious liquid started to ooze from the mouth of the crucified Christ. If you actually look at the crucified Christ, his mouth is slightly open. And people started to notice that there was something coming out of his mouth, and there was no real explanation for it. People started flocking to this image and really believing that it was a miracle. They brought the Vatican in, they did a whole investigation, and it turned out that it wasn't really a miracle after all. And in fact, it was that some bees had placed a honeycomb within the mouth of the Christ. And what happens in Sevilla is it gets very, very hot. And so the body of Christ, as it were, was heating up to the point where the honey started to melt in his mouth and ooze out. I still think it's quite a lovely metaphor anyway. You can add in a few layers there if you really wanted to. But I like to think of it as kind of, the sweetness of Christ, the triumph of Christ over death. But anyway, that's just me. Very poetic. I guess one of the things that I found quite touching and which I had never seen in my life before was groups of people, families, entire families flocking to a cemetery on the 1st of November and the 2nd of November to take care of the tombs of their loved ones. Now, I'm not saying that, I'm from the UK, and I'm not saying that in the UK we don't look after the tombs of our loved ones. It's custom, at least where I'm from in Manchester, it's custom to go and visit the tomb of your loved one and to leave flowers, maybe, or maybe light a candle. It's usually on the anniversary of the death of the person. But what I'd never seen before is people going as in a unit, in a family unit, to the tomb of their loved ones with sponges and buckets and washing up liquid and just being ready to scrub the headstone clean. Like, they weren't just leaving flowers, they do a full-on cleaning operation. I just thought it was such a lovely detail, and it's a sign of faith, because if you don't believe in the afterlife, I guess, what is the point of cleaning a tomb? If you believe that the resurrection is a real thing and that we continue to have value even after we have died, then of course you're going to look after the tomb of your loved one. Of course you're going to pray for them. Cleaning the tombs of their loved ones. I've never seen that in my life. I was walking through the cemetery. I saw a tomb open and I internally freaked out. Like, I had my poker face on. I just didn't react. But inside I was screaming. What I was thinking was, this is a grave. Somebody has stolen the body, or someone's like having a miracle moment and they've just decided to get up, or like if anyone's seen Kill Bill, the way she like comes out of the tomb just like punching her way through the earth, and I was like, are we in a Kill Bill situation here? I actually looked around me to see if anyone else was reacting to this. Nobody was reacting. It didn't take me long to notice that a few meters away there were other tombs that were open, and I realised, okay, this is an actual thing. And I had a look in, and and of course it wasn't just a grave. So it actually turns out that it's more like a mausoleum situation going on. So if you like, they lift the lid up of the tomb, and then you can actually go down the steps and go into a space where there's more than one grave. Since then I've spoken to various people who are from Sevilla, and they've told me, oh yeah, that's normal. I had no idea. Just to share a little bit of my own experiences of November as a UK Catholic, which is very different because you're in a Protestant country, or as it is today, mainly an atheist, agnostic country. In my experience, the most typical thing about November, remembering the dead, is that you would go to your parish priest. He asks people to give him envelopes with the names of your dead relatives in the envelope. So you write a list out of the people that you would like to pray for in the month of November, and then you give that to the priest, and he puts that on the altar, and throughout the month of November he offers every mass for the names of the people on the altar. So there's just another way to remember the dead. There are ways and ways, right? It's just slightly more, I guess it's more internalized, it's more reflective, whereas as with many things in Sevillano Andalusian culture, it's much more of an external expression of faith. So, I mean, if you look at Semana Santa, look at Holy Week, you'd be hard pressed to find a much more expressive Semana Santa than in Andalusia and in Sevilla. It's a very much external expression of faith. And I feel like that's maybe what happens with the whole idea of looking after the tombs of your loved ones, everybody gathering together, making it a social event. And I really like that. I think that's beautiful. I'm a bit weird because I do actually like cemeteries. I do like to have a wander around cemeteries every now and then and just have a look and see who's there and kind of imagine what sort of a life they lived. And I don't know, I'm a history geek, so cemeteries for me are like living history, but it doesn't quite fit, does it? And I feel like a lot of cemeteries get neglected. You know, we've got things like Halloween making ground in Sevilla, but it's important not to forget the traditions of Sevilla and of Spanish culture. Like, it's so precious, and should be looked after. Outward expressions of faith are so important, and it's part of Andalusian life, and I hope it always remains part of Andalusian life. God forbid the day when we stop expressing outwardly what we carry within us. That's how you make connections and build communities and navigate your way through life, isn't it? By sharing with other people what you're carrying within yourself. There's my homily for the day. Another cemetery that is kind of neglected in Sevilla is the English cemetery. I don't know why it's called the English cemetery, because when you go there, there's mainly Scottish people that are buried there. The Scots have had a big influence on how Andalusia developed, so the Scots came over in the last century or so and invested a lot of money into things like the development of gasworks and mining and even football clubs. They brought football with them, so the Andalusians owe a lot to the Scots, actually, I have to say. I say this as the daughter of a Scot. It's unfortunate. The English cemetery is crumbling, and it's no exaggeration to say that. It's absolutely crumbling, and it's seen better days. So a lot of the headstones are missing. People have been stealing the crosses, the bronze crosses from there. I think they're bronze or iron. Some of the tombstones are just in absolute tatters. The English cemetery is closed, and it's not been open for burials since, I think, 1995, if I remember rightly. And it's just fallen into complete disrepair. So if you're into restoration and you fancy a new project, there's an association that looks after the English cemetery, so give the English cemetery a call, because they really need help. There are some real characters in the English cemetery. There's a real life James Bond kind of character in there. There's somebody that, there are people related to the creation of Sevilla Football Club, and all kinds of famous people and important people who've just, their remains have been left in a surrounding that is just decaying, and it needs some real TLC. So there's a little project for you. We're still in the month of the Holy Souls, so it's still a great time to go and visit the cemeteries and to maybe say a prayer for the people that are buried there, and don't forget your own dead, because they're still with you whether you believe it or not. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and please do get in touch with any of your own thoughts. See you later. Hasta luego.